Hi, this is Rooney 207. Thank you for coming back to and taking a look at my channel here. For today's topic, it's a little bit different. This one, we're going to look at Web3 gaming from a auditor's perspective and thinking about it from a secure information security professional. So I think for this one is a basic introduction to the AICPA's SOC reports and the checklist items that you can consider. So if you're interested in this topic, please like, comment, and let me know so I can make another series of it. I can introduce the various risk and control matrix, the principles that go, and all the other components and complementary reports. We can talk about the use cases and things like that later on. For the purpose of this is just a introduction, and this is for the AICPA, which is the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. They have the Canadian version, the international version, and various countries have their own accounting organizations as well. And they all follow very similar guidelines when it comes to the service organization control reports. And for the purposes of this video, we're talking about the service organization controls, not the security operations center. So we're not talking about the security engineers that, let's say, for the purposes of Splinterlands, a company or Steam Monster that reports into PJ, the Chief Technology Officer. This is more perhaps reporting either directly into the security organization if the Splinterlands decides to stand up another security operations, or it could report into PJ, but under the GRC department. It just depends on how he wants to structure it and things like that. The intended audience would be for any of the Web3 gamers that are interested, any of the investors, any data centers, centralized, decentralized exchange, layer ones, validator nodes. If you own any, if you're part of a DAO, you have your own company, any of the gaming studios, partners, any of the security compliance auditors space, and of course our user player community. See, the unique part about the Web 2 is that, or Web 3 gaming community, is that we get into the investment, the finance side, where we become a business owners or investor or business partner of the gaming studio. From that perspective, we want to look and think from that angle, and we want to focus on people, process, product, service, and technology. The SOC 2 report is nice. It consolidates everything into a little mini report, and some are a lot larger. They could be over 100 pages in depth, but it covers a lot of different areas. It covers various principles such as security, privacy, confidentiality, available processing integrity, those types. And the SOC 2, the minimum requirement for the SOC 2 report that any company would be the security principle, and as the company matures, they'll add others, and as they have intended requests by the various user organizations and partners, they'll request other principles as well that make sense. And I think in terms of looking at if you're thinking like you're a Web3 player and investor and you own a business, let's say you own land, you own various tokens, various NFTs, and as you're staking them, and you want to look at it from a vendor management and risk management function. So you want to look at what are the risks that you're essentially exposing your financial to, and then what are the returns, and what are the considerations you want to go into. I think the components of the report will detail all the pieces. In terms of the actual report itself, you want to make sure you have the correct report piece, and so you want to look at if we're not interested in the SOC 1, which is the auditor to auditor report. Those are for financial people who do the annual reports or who place reliance on another company's financial report. Let's say if you're putting reliance on ADP, for instance, their financial piece, because they're escrolling or taking a certain amount of money and they're kind of holding it before the payroll cycle. So you want to make sure that they're financially, fiscally sound. From that regard, you're interested in a SOC 1. The SOC 2 represents the principles, the trust services principles, and it relates to the components of people, process, technology, products, services, things like that, that you're interested. And then there's also the SOC 2 plus, the additional subject matter assessment, and this is for an integrated audit approach where you test once, you comply many, and where it would be helpful is if you're undergoing various compliance. Let's say you're interacting with PayPal or a vendor that has exposure to the credit card, the PCI data, the payment card industry's data security standard. And I think where it comes in is you can take the controls and you can integrate it, and you hope to have some cost savings into it. So you would consider a product like the SOC 2 Plus, where it's applicable. In terms of who can issue the report, it's typically issued by an accounting firm, and the accounting firm would be part of a various network of accountants, and they use resources, and you want to make sure that the accounting firm use resources that are either very experienced or certified, someone that can speak to the product. And when they look at your controls and when they test the controls, if a vendor of yours or a third party or a partner of partnership program where they are interested in assessing your risk and they have certain questions on the controls or how the controls were tested because it wasn't 100% clear. So you want your auditors to have some kind of security experience and certifications, such as the CISSP for the Certified Information Systems Security Professional, or the CISA, or the CRISC. These two are from an organization that's from AICPA, and they also have a third one, the CISM, for the security manager role as well for the certification. The SOC 2 tends to be a time period, so it's not a point in time, it's a coverage period. It can go from anywhere from 3, 4, 6, 9, 12-month, 18-month period, coverage period. And then those that are less than 1 year, let's say you're a gamer, you want to ensure that the DAO has the most recent control in place and have performed a certain number of sample size over a certain period, which is a year per se. Some may want to issue a bridge letter, but typically we want to discourage that. We prefer that they would actually produce the report by an independent auditor. And I realize the cost is slightly more, but at the end of the day, you rather want the population and sample size to be tested versus a letter from the executives stating their certification or recertification of the controls from a bridge letter side. And you want to look at the auditor's opinion, make sure it's a unqualified opinion. Typically, these are a marketing product by a vendor or a service organization. So they'll probably put their best foot forward, and then they'll also take out certain controls that they may deem either high risk or not relevant, or they just don't want to talk about it and cover it, and maybe they'll do it later on, and they'll have conversations. So you want to look through that, and you just want to scan through. Very few SOC 2 reports are qualified opinions, and you won't have any that are adverse or disclaimers or going concerns, things like that. Because at the end of the day, you would not want to use a product like SOC 2 for marketing purposes where it's negative. The most important item to keep in mind is that they're viewed, and you want to look at from a management. If managers have an opinion, the company, the leadership have an opinion regarding the operating effectiveness of a control. Sometimes the auditors may make comments on it, or they may fail a control, and then the management team will have a response. And so you want to look at the management's response section of that. The report itself can be two types. One is the inclusive one, where they cover the whole thing. Let's say a data center, they'll just consolidate everything into a centralized operating center, and then they'll just have this burst data center across the United States or anywhere in the global footprint. And then there are others that they choose more of a carve-out approach, where they just pick and choose and modulized. So it'll come in many different reports, depending on the strategy, the vendor's costs and the risk to them, the exposure. They'll choose to go a combination of these paths. And then you want to look at the management's description of the service organization's control environment. They'll provide that to the accounting firm who issues the report, and you want to look at it to make sure it covers the areas or the statement that you believe are relevant to what you're looking for and you need. And then you want to look at the exceptions part of the report. A lot of reports come pretty clean, so you kind of have to understand the business model and what it is that your expectation is, and you want to have, if they become a critical vendor, you want to have meaningful conversation with them, especially if they have basically their own vendors, so they become fourth-party vendors to you, and then as a business model, you want to look at their exposure too. And let's see, this is regarding the risk and control matrix section, how it's tested, looking at the exceptions. And then you want to look at the maturity and the internal control functions. You want to essentially look at where the maturity of the business that you're interacting with and the size, the complexity. If they're in Web3, chances are they're not publicly traded. They don't have the Sarbanes-Oxley regulatory controls applied to them. So you want to look at the revenue and your expectation around the risk and the internal controls. Should they have a one is what are the functions they outsource? Are they outsourcing HR? Are they outsourcing sales, marketing? And are they outsourcing part of their development, their call centers or help desk function? So you want to look at those pieces. And then in aggregate, you want to look at do they have a security department? Are they big enough? Should they have a security department? And is the security department the role from an organization? So you want to look at a high-level organizational chart if it's provided in the report. If not, you can have a conversation with leadership and management. You can ping them on it. And you want to look at are they big enough to have a director of security? And if they have a director of security, should that person be in a higher level? Should the person be a VP or a senior VP, a chief information security officer or a chief security officer? And then you want to look at, are they big enough to have an internal audit department, or do they outsource it to a CPA firm? And is that CPA firm serving the role strictly for tax purposes? So you want to look at those kinds of considerations. And then if they're sizable enough, should they have a IT GRC group for conducting management self-assessment? And are they designing their procedures, their policies in a meaningful, effective way? You want to have those kinds of conversations with those folks in those positions. And then you want to look at the reporting structure. Does it make sense for the IT GRC individual to report into security? Is it embedded into the security function and the security controls, or should it be separated where it represents the best interest of in terms of the business entity, the partner? Does it make sense for their IT GRC team to be separate outside of information security and reporting to somewhere like the CTO organization, for example? A lot of CTOs don't want to add more and more direct reports because it's just more and more responsibility and time away from their actual function from a delivery, a product perspective. So many shy away from having a IT GRC directly reporting into them. They'll put that person under either the risk group or the information security team. it's a consideration there. There's a user consideration section where they'll say, okay, this report, you're dependent on it. This is what we expect of you, and these are your complementary user entity controls or description of client considerations. These are the things that we expect you to handle on your own, and you need to not be dependent on us for those types of controls that are on your end, and we have no control over it. The and like I had mentioned earlier, the subservice provider, many of these companies have vendors of their own, and they may outsource. So they may, let's say for the Web3 company, let's say for like Splinterlands, they may place reliance on Hive blockchain from a layer one perspective. And they also have the SPS chain, the DAO, they have other components, and they may outsource their database hosting to Amazon Web Service. You kind of have to look at the aggregate and see where you think are the relevant risk to you as an investor. And I think when you look at risk in general, you want to look at the people. You want to look at leadership, the CEO, the senior leadership, the founders, the board of the company, and how much you know about it. And then you want to look at the DAO component, the SPS chain. You want to look at and understand the maturity roadmap and how they're integrated from the perspective that there's going to be a 4 to 6 year cycle, and they're going to mature it. But what will it look like? And do you have enough faith and trust in the leadership to hold the tokens or the cards, the assets long enough for the duration for it to mature? At the end of the day, a lot of the Web3 gaming providers, they're basically a startup, and they're funded by X number of dollars. They're limited. I think maybe perhaps later on there will be larger and larger vendors that will come in. But as a result of the larger vendors coming in, your return is also diminished too. You may not experience the asymmetric return versus now you can have an asymmetric return on a lot of these things. You can consider the 100x type of return. And in the Web 2 world, 100x returns are pretty rare unless you're an accredited investor, you know what you're doing. And in that case, you may be investing in high risk alpha as well. So it kind of goes both ways. And you want to keep a list, and you want to work with folks that are knowledgeable in terms of understanding what are some of the providers, and you want to look at to ensure that you take proper risk. And over time, security becomes a very important product, a cornerstone of what a business or a company. And you can see by like the percentage of revenue of a company investing in security. So when you look at a traditional Web 2, they may spend upwards of 3 to 5% versus I think potentially Web 2 may spend less, and they may not have a director of information security or VP or a CISO. So those are, I think, are critical elements that you have to look at from maturity and investment perspective. And this is it for now. And if you find that you like videos like these, are interested in from an audit, risk controls, information security, GRC perspective, let me know. Just like, comment, and I'll make some more videos. Thank you so much.